Like, what are you saying? Yeah. So you know, when I'm saying stuff, I'm telling people I said it to Ben Crump. I've even said it to senators when they're talking about people with mental health. I said, stop saying that. Okay, first of all, you don't know. You don't know what the training jacket looks like. So stop talking about training, law enforcement. I said, you haven't even read the file. Like you don't know what kind of training they had. Like you really listened to somebody else and you went out there and said that. Stop saying that. And stop like don't do this. And they're like, oh, okay. So Senator Tim Kaine, he was like, oh, and I said it at a party too. And I was thinking as I was saying, oh, they're never inviting me back to anything else. Because I was saying, you got this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And everybody was looking and I said, when I leave here, I'm just not gonna be invited back. And then I got this round of applause and I was like, oh, well, okay. Not that I was gonna stop saying it anyway, because it's just who I am. I'm like, stop saying that. That's not the truth. That's not the truth.
Well, what is it that makes us so spicy? Is it the food? Is it the nightlife or the brilliance of the man that is the pride of Louisiana when he's not rocking in the courtroom and running his own law firm and visiting churches all over the world? He's a staple on court TV as well as a number of other news outlets and killing it on his own podcast and on social media and on Talk 107.3 with Brian Haldane. He is the incredible Franz Borghardt, joined, who is usually very tardy but not here right now, by a Truth or Derek podcast Hall of Famer a mere 2 states over, also incredible in the courtroom on social media and running his own law firm. You know him from Court TV, CNN, ATL News 1, Scripps, and a million other places when they need great advice. He is the deep digging, tell it like it is Georgian badass that is Joshua Schiffer. And joining us for the first time, when she's not enforcing the truth on the mean streets of Twitter, you can find her all over CNN, Court TV, the Law Crime Network, Scripps, and 100 other places when nothing but the best will do. When she's not educating the masses on the issues of social justice and laying the smackdown in the world of leadership training, she's busy running one of the best consulting firms in the country, the master connector and the Olivia Pope of crime. She is the fantastic Sunny Slaughter. How is everyone doing today?
What's
Oh,
up?
well, oh Lord. Okay, can we record that again? Because I need that whole clip where you're introducing me, Franz is smoking his cigarette. I need this on my whole like
You
uh
can you can rip
talking
it
thing.
from so when this comes out, Sonny,
Yeah.
you can just rip it. And Derek may get some name image likeness stuff, but whatever. So I'm excited that we have Sonny because the number one coffee conversation I'm having with non-lawyers right now
Mhm.
is about the Penny case in
Yes, I
the
knew it.
in the New York sub. And I've got to tell you, everybody and their uncle has an opinion about it. We all watch the same video. I am interested because one of the hot topics I've heard about, Sonny, is um, with training, whether it's military training, with law enforcement training, with training, sometimes comes the absence of training about how to reintegrate into civilian life and not kill somebody with a chokehold.
Yeah.
Sorry, Franz.
Diffuse
Do you
situation.
want to just refresh everybody on what the Penny case is?
I'm getting there, dude. I'm warming up. Let me ease into it. I gotta have a little foreplay, Derek.
Franz
So
Borghardt, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah, no, Franz doesn't know what foreplay is. So New York subway. I'm oversimplifying the facts, guys. New York sub. We're all riding the sub together. If you've never ridden in the subway before, the unwritten rule is if somebody's acting crazy on the subway, DC has subs,
Yeah.
is you just put your head down and ignore it. Well, a guy is on the train. He has a history of mental health. I'm not going to go any deeper than that because I don't know what's fact and fiction on that. But apparently, there's some threats going on. Guy who is a Marine steps up, involves himself in the situation, puts him in what can arguably be in a chokehold or a whatever the maneuver is, and detains him. And the problem is he holds them in this hold, and he holds them in this hold, and ultimately the guy, the subway passenger who's on the train dies of asphyxiation as a result of the hold. The whole thing is captured on video. It gets national attention. The guy is tried. He testifies at the trial, and ultimately the jury, I think yesterday or today,
Yeah.
one of the two, um, depending on when this is aired, the guy is acquitted. which I gotta tell you, I was a little surprised at. Not because I don't necessarily think that he was not, quote unquote, not guilty, but I thought at least the jury was going to say, we don't think you had the intent to kill, but maybe this is a manslaughter, maybe this is a negligent homicide, but they outright acquitted him, Derek.
Well, first of all, it is a negligent homicide. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm going through the story. I don't know if the guy, like, what happened 10 minutes kind of before the thing, like maybe he was assaulting somebody or something like that. But again, unless the guy's out there with a gun pointing it or a knife pointing it at somebody, you can't, crazy or not, you can't grab somebody and just, squeeze the life out of them.
So this is where your de-escalation tactics come into play when you are restraining someone. And, you in the training component, which is what I'm always talking about with law enforcement, military folks, and understanding the components of a chokehold, which is what, so I think, we want to level down to what people can understand. A chokehold is where you literally restrain someone around the neck, causing their body, and I think he had him across the leg or something like that, where the individual could not move at all. But the only thing about the chokehold is it is such a restrictive maneuver until asphyxiation, okay, excuse my Bell's palsy, really becomes the point where you have to be paying attention to the level of resistance that someone is giving you. Now, in addition to Penny holding the individual down, the person that they said was acting erratic on the train, there was someone else holding them down. And we've seen this a lot with law enforcement. And I say law enforcement because you don't get to see this so much with military personnel, but you've seen where multiple people are holding an individual down, and people for some reason tend to forget about how fast asphyxiation can happen. And when you are training and being trained on these maneuvers, that is one of the things that you are being told that you need to remember. The length of restraint, how hard you restrain, and whether the restraint is to stop an individual's behavior initially, or to just keep doing it, which is what happened. This lasted, according to what the case said, and Franz and I and Josh, we've all covered this case on court TV at some point in time, was around 6 minutes. If someone took 6 minutes, and just if we were quiet for 6 minutes, you would see how long that actually is.
Oh, it's a gulf of
It's a
time.
lifetime, yeah.
Sonny is absolutely right. 6 minutes is a long time.
I just wanted to just go back for 1 second, Sonny, because I know that you use the word de-escalation, and I know you work with a lot of police training and whatnot. Does the Army have like a de-escalation system? I know that would be in the police academy, but is that kind of overlooked in the Army, or is, like, to your knowledge, is that a section of their training?
So the military, everyone has a form of de-escalation, whether they a component of it, because you cannot engage without knowing how to disengage. And you cannot engage without knowing the level. De-escalation is around communication, critical skills using communication tactics that don't always involve physical violence. And when they do, the amount of force and restraint that you use must be proportional to only the physical act that is being conducted at the time. And then you must de-escalate. That means back off, back off, back off. In this particular case, it was a steady threat of a hold.
And what's interesting is, and I'm not even going to pretend like I know what Sonny knows. I think common, reasonable minds would have said, okay, that you put him in this maneuver to detain him was okay. It was the lengthened duration and the failure to release him. And here's the wonderful part about this. This was all on video. Think about how this trial goes differently if the whole thing is not on video and we're just talking about it and we're explaining it. So the jury got to see in real time how this all played out and shaped out. So there was this weird question in the case of, okay, did he go too far? Which is what many of us thought This is why this is negligent homicide, is he was grossly negligent on how long he held it, or this is why this is manslaughter, because he held him in such a way that in the heat of the moment, it stopped being self-defense. And by the way,
Right.
self-defense was always problematic in this case because it was not self-defense, it was defense of others, which is a different standard. So it was a very as much as it was simple because it was on video, it was complex.
You're absolutely right. And okay, so when you're responding to something, even as an ordinary individual, say, you know, I think we just saw the other case where the guy said, well, I was under threat. So, you know, it was what's the case, Franz, where the individual broke into the home and he attacked the guy when he was nude. And remember, he shot.
Yeah, the recent one. There's a recent case that it just got tried where home invasion, ex-boyfriend or stalker or something.
Yeah. So you know how you get anxious or something, and then you know the threat was about reasonable, proportional threat, and whether self-defense of self and property and family. That's kind of what that case was. In this particular case, you know, he just didn't know when to let go. He was so moment. And then if you look at the video, there was a pat of the hand where the victim, and I'm saying victim, was trying to say, you know, he was tapping. You know what I'm saying? So like
kind of a universal language, like I'm done, let me go.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm cool.
And with all of these cases, what is the one thing that is consistent? There is the threat of I can't breathe. And when somebody is telling you that they can't breathe, even though they're talking, they're restricted. The compression on the chest and the throat becomes so intense till you really can't breathe. I have kids, I think we all might have kids, but if you set a child even on your chest and they had a little weight to them, at some point in time, your breathing would become labored and you'd be like, okay, now it's time to get off, you know. And I'm just talking about if they were a good sized kid or whatever, and you can't breathe. You might be able to move, but you can feel the compression. I think this case, the individuals on the jury, I was surprised. And then what made it even worse is the case became an issue around race. And then when it came about race, I was like, here we go again. Here we go.
Oh, it was the perfect storm. It was race, mental health,
military,
possible military, possible. And by the way, just as much as a lot of us love armed services folk, there are some people who don't love armed services folk. Protests happening outside of the courtroom. You had also the component of, was the victim on drugs, not on drugs, drug user, not on drug user, which again, erratic mental health behavior being what it is, it just became the perfect storm of everything that had nothing to do with the legal standard of too much or okay, just enough, versus all these external things. Now, what I think happened was I think they became deadlocked. And I think there was probably a holdout for guilty. The other 11 were like, nah, whatever. At some point, they were deadlocked such that the court dismissed manslaughter. So a lot of us thought, okay, he's out of the woods for the most serious crime. Lesser included criminal negligence, serious crime, but not as serious. So in my world, as a defense attorney, when the most serious crime goes away, and now you're talking about a crime that maybe he won't serve any jail time on, okay? I thought that was going to be the compromise verdict. I thought, we don't want to send a Marine to jail, or we don't want to convict him of this higher crime. No. Apparently, at some point, the holdout gave up. It could have been a hung jury ultimately altogether, and they would have ended up trying the case again. That's not what happened, though, because ultimately they acquitted him.
So, friends, just one last question for you before we move on, because we do have a ton of shit we have to get to today.
Stop.
Sorry. We have a shit ton of stuff to get through. Now, when I first saw this, because again, if you take obviously the race issue, but if you take that out and you take out like if you just look at the facts of this case, one guy choked another one and he got off and the guy died. My first thought was the defense attorney was better than the prosecutor, and that was what I wanted to ask you. We were talking a few things. Is this just one lawyer outlawyering the other one, or was this a
Well,
jury?
I think you had lawyering issues in terms of you had a good defense attorney, you had a quote unquote likable defendant. Because look, let's not mince words. Regardless of whether or not you think he acted inappropriately or not, you got a clean cut young man. He's former Marine. Well, they're not a Marine is always a Marine. They're never not a Marine. So you had
Right.
a good looking Marine who in terms of appearance, in terms of what I would want for a client, looked the part. Now the flip side of that is he was absolutely white guy who killed an African American, right? So I think part of it was the nuance of turning. I think part of it was the expertise that came to the table. I wanted to hear testimony or more testimony about, okay, look, this guy's trained in such a way, this exceeded the training. I
Right.
wanted to hear more about, okay, yes, he is conditioned to act. He is conditioned to go towards the danger, right? Which is the same thing law enforcement guys are trained to do. Go towards the danger. However, just because he has that training doesn't mean that what he did in this case was right. And I
Right.
think part of it was just, again, I hate to say perfect storm. And look, jurors are human beings. They get distracted by nuances and things that really aren't relevant to the question that become relevant to the question. If a juror says, and this is what reports are saying, hey, we heard the protests outside and we got pissed off at that.
Mm,
Has nothing to do about the facts of the case, right? Has
right.
everything to do with possibly how they came down. And last thing, unlike the defense, if the jury decides in favor of the defendant against the government, against the state, against the Commonwealth, whatever, wherever you are, the state, the prosecution doesn't get a second bite at the apple. They can't say, well, wait a minute, you got it wrong. Once the individual's acquitted, they're acquitted. The constitutional principle of double jeopardy attaches and it's game over. So that is the complexity of what we're dealing with. It could be better lawyering. It could be that, hey, that side just did a better job. But it could also be all these other external things that came into the jury room that shouldn't have, that came into the decision.
Yeah. And I don't like the fact that race played into this, because I think that when the race factor came in there, and I'm Black, of course, if you can't see, that I don't think that he did it because the guy was Black. I think he did it because he thought he was a threat. And then we get off of what Franz was saying, the topic of whether his training came into play and whether he used a maneuver for far too long. And that is actually the topic that we need to focus on. And not saying that race should be completely ignored, but I don't think that he did this because the person was Black.
And
Yeah,
let's say hypothetically, he Marines up, and instead of putting him in a detaining hold, a chokehold, he just beats the snot out of the guy.
knocks him out.
Which on all accounts, I think it's a fact not in dispute that he could do that.
Yeah.
We're having a different conversation at that point, right? He beats him up, he knocks him out, he's knocked out, he's not dead, maybe he is, I don't know. It's a different conversation. I think he thought by putting him in this hold, it was a quote unquote non-violent response to a situation. However, it ended up with someone dying. So it's a interesting case. And look, New York's not exactly a place that I would have, I mean, full disclosure, when I heard this case was being tried in New York, I was like, that's not necessarily going to be a defense friendly, because we've seen other chokehold cases in the same jurisdiction that went totally different. So,
and somebody had a mental health alleged issue, and it was on a train or in a subway or something and the person was acting. So when you have all of these ands, and then you get this, but for the fact that he did not de-escalate when he should have and could have, we now have a murder now that has led to a not guilty that is now going to a civil case and a lot of issues around race and not necessarily the issue around de-escalation and training. Whether we have a responsibility to take care of other people when we see a crisis.
And here is the beauty of the civil case, Derek. And I know we have other things to talk about. The beauty of the civil case is the family's going to absolutely sue the city because the city is the deep pocket. I don't know if this Marine has money or not, may not have a pot to piss in, but the city has money. And the claim against the city is going to be negligent security, failure to protect, failure to have safeguards. And look, again, I'm not in a place where I ride a subway. I don't know what security they have on these trains or don't have on it. But you better believe the civil case is going to sue the city because they're the deep pocket.
Yeah.
And it's a home run. I mean, it sounds like it, ask for 10 million, you'll get 1.5 and you'll be in and out in a day.
Well, failure to secure the victim, failure to secure against the Marine.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of failures, let's talk about JayZ for a second.
Yeah, some people are not agreeing with me on this. So I actually agree with JayZ. Where's the criminal complaint on this? Now I work defense and prosecution, and I'm actually the human trafficking. I'm a globally recognized expert on trafficking. I have handled everything from policies to practice to working with victims in litigation cases. My concern about this case is
unknown accuser.
Well, the person I get concerned when we start talking about trafficking and SA cases where the individual is no longer the 13-year-old, because we keep talking about the person like they're still 13 now, and that there's a mitigation case. If the allegations are true, this is my point. If the allegations, which are heinous in nature, but I still got 101 questions about what I read in the complaint, are true, this requires a federal investigation, because if what the alleged victim said, that when she talked to the driver of the limo, that she was P. Diddy's type, then that means we have other potential victims, which requires that we do a criminal investigation. I'm not saying that they can't do the whole civil stuff, but how are we having a conversation and not an investigation is always the irritation to me. Let's get the facts confirmed.
Is it not already going to be a RICO case?
It could be.
P. Diddy's case is a RICO case.
Well, then they can just they can backdoor them that way, can they not?
So the new trend is going to always be the new trend for prosecutors is always going to be when they can do RICO, they will do RICO. It's cumbersome. It's harder to prosecute, but Sonny is dead right. You're not you're not a celebrity like JayZ or like Diddy, and things just magically appear in front of you. Although that's the fantasy, right? Is Diddy can have anybody. Why would he ever do? I mean, women just fall from the ceiling for Diddy. There are handlers
and men.
There are, yes, I was trying to be kind about it, but yeah, I mean, but there are handlers. There are people that line things up for these celebrities. You cannot. It's not a one-man show, so to speak. And so you could have a RICO situation where the people that worked under JayZ get investigated for helping. And of course, they don't have the financial bandwidth that JayZ has. So the tendency is they're going to cooperate and or cut deals.
Like YSL.
Because exactly. Because they can't afford, look, going to jail sucks. Diddy is an example of just because you have a shit ton of money doesn't mean you're getting out on federal bond or federal release.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, you're right. You're right. Well,
I think that you're going to see the screws being tightened on some of the subordinates under that RICO scheme because the screws can be tightened to them, and they're not going to have these Josh Schiffer-esque attorneys. See what I did there? These
Well
high
done.
quality, top dollar attorneys because they can't afford them. You know, you're talking about $1 million criminal defense. Well, the assistant manager to the manager doesn't have $1 million to bankroll Josh Schiffer.
the concept and the context around a human trafficking scheme and a RICO case is that there are collaborators, there are individuals who are participating, and that is what makes it the RICO that it is, because there are so many. You know, I'm going to use this for, in many cases you have seen, and Maxwell was what they would call, and excuse my term, the bottom bitch. So the bottom bitch is the individual, the person that facilitates and that actually goes out and recruits and brings in and coordinates. So they play a very significant role. Now, ironically, because Epstein's case was more high profile, they didn't call her that, but that was her role in operating in these type of criminal schemes. When it comes to, as far as many victims that I've worked with and survivors and things, I've had a lot of judges say to me, because they will call me in and say, well, Sonny, I think this is human trafficking. Well, human trafficking sounds sexy. And that is why we're always talking about sex trafficking when there's so many other things. But I will tell a judge in a minute, or somebody, first of all, judge, you can't be in here when I'm talking to the individual. I don't care if this is your courtroom, you got to go. And if I'm in there in the box with the law enforcement, I'm asking the questions that they might not be asking, because I need to confirm. They might be a victim, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are a victim of trafficking. It doesn't mean that it falls within the elements of the law. And because I'm so firm on that part, it also doesn't mean that they had no knowledge that their actions were criminal in nature and that they could be potentially facing jail time for this, because not only what the other person did, but then what they engaged in as well. That has nothing to do with those that are sex workers who operate in locations where sex work is legal, but sex work is not legal in most locations.
Okay, so
So
I wanted to take it back.
Hold on. Complicity is going to be the frontier of this prosecution.
Yeah.
And Derek, you yourself will appreciate what I'm about to say. It's like J-Lo. Okay. J-Lo may not have been lining up the human trafficking, but did she know it was going on, and was she complicit, and then she failed to say anything about it? And maybe complicity isn't a crime, but in the court of public opinion, oh, it absolutely is a crime. You knew and you didn't do anything. And I'm not saying J-Lo knew. I'm just using that as an example of, I don't think Beyonce, I mean, I've seen Lemonade. I've listened to it. I cherish that album. I don't think Beyonce knew until she knew, and she had quite a reaction to knowing whatever she knew. So I think complicity is going to
in that room, huh? You saw that name got dropped in that room. I thought that was interesting, and it tracks with the time.
So a question for both of you. Maybe Sonny, you can go first, because I was saying to you right before we started recording, I just wanted to look at this from the other side. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of names coming out of this over the next, God, this trial is going to be 3 or 4 years, I would imagine. Are you guilty just by your name coming up? And by that, I mean, Franz as a lawyer, Sonny as a consultant. Let's say JayZ or somebody else name comes out, and they walk into your office and say, listen, this is going to ruin my life, whether I'm guilty or not. Or is it one of those things where, you know, we talked about it before with Lauren. If I went to one of Puffy's parties, I didn't see any weird shit, this, that, and the other thing, but, you know, 50 people saw me there and my name comes out. Am I guilty by association, or, you know, is there a way out?
I think I started one of my posts about that. I don't like the guilt by association because you are talking about celebrities. You are talking about individuals that people want to get next to. You're talking about those that are in the same crowd. Because you are connected to someone or know someone doesn't mean that you engaged in the same criminal activity. Doesn't mean that you, and even if you were aware, it doesn't mean that you felt comfortable in stopping something that you didn't actually see, but maybe have only heard. The thing about Diddy's case, without me saying too much of what I know, the evidence against him and the evidence against most people, and you and Franz, and I'm sure you all have figured this out, is largely based on what he has provided. So when the raids took place, the amount of actual evidence, factual evidence, is what they are still going through right now. That's what they can look at. I don't think there's always going to be a guilt by association. And remember, there were two types of parties. Diddy threw a party, and then he threw an after party. The freak-offs were different than some of the other parties that individuals may have attended. If you attended some of those other parties, I think that's where you have some concern. And I have been saying that everyone should get a lawyer. You should at least talk to someone so you will know where you are. But guilt by association, I happen to be the great niece of the Baltimore drug kingpin. So if you've seen American Gangster,
I have.
the threads of my family exist right there. Okay. And that's a very heavy thread. And they may be gone, and my uncle is gone, and my grandmother is all gone. But you don't think the children are gone, because some of my relatives just got another hit a few years ago. They are the children of the children. Am I a vermin? Oh, partly, yes, I am. So you have to be careful about, do I know all of them? My grandmother did her best to keep me away from all of that. And I did not know who I was related to until I was 16 years old and went for my first security clearance, a very high profile one for the state of New Jersey for the Division of Gaming Enforcement. And then that's when that came up. And then my name is in a federal logbook of visiting my uncle. Well, heck, I didn't know that he was a kingpin. So I think we should watch the guilt by association. I think Franz was right when it comes to Beyonce. I don't see her participating or knowingly engaged or witnessing that type of criminal activity and not having a response.
So the fact that Diddy has had a propensity to catalog his endeavors through videoing and recording and whatnot, I think Sonny's dead on. I don't think that they necessarily will need the cooperation. They'll have the cooperation at some point. But I think that's going to speak for itself. So you'll have a video of, I think where it gets gray is there is a scenario where you're at the party, you walk across the freak out party, and you're like, I'm out. I'm good. I'm not around for this. And you leave. That's easy, right? The harder thing is going to be the individual that's sitting and watching and not necessarily participating, but is clearly watching. That's going to be where it gets gray.
Yeah.
And those individuals, I think, will absolutely cooperate out of a fear of, well, shit, if I don't cooperate, I could be the next to get indicted. And it's even murkier than like Epstein. You don't end up on the island if you don't kind of know what's happening on the island, if you know what I mean, right? It's totally different if you're in the music industry and you're at the party because that's where everybody is. And you're like, okay, well, I'm just here having fun. And then like the after party starts and you're like, oh shit, I didn't know this was about it. Or maybe you heard that was what the after party was like. And you're like, I'm exiting stage left because I don't want to be a part of this. It's going to get very gray. But look, at the end of the day, The king is who they're going after. They're going after the Diddy. They're going after the head, the celebrity where you can make a career out of prosecuting Diddy and convicting him. You can make a career out of going after Jay-Z and possibly convicting him. The flip side is these individuals have the bandwidth to defend themselves.
Yeah. And they have so even if there's no criminal exposure, people have to worry about their public relations exposure if they are a high profile person. So they might not want to see themselves attached. They have the evidence on Diddy. They've had it. They're going through it. It's a lot to go through because it has to go through the filter team. And then it has to go to the investigators. So it's a filter team, and depending on how graphic it is, then you got people looking for everything. So if you all are a part of the team and I'm in my location, you are literally looking for everything that you can see behind me. If there's a condom somewhere, if you see a book, a name, a card, you're looking that deeply. When I'm looking at the videos and things, and I'm looking at every single thing I can see where you are. And that is literally going through screen, there's a lot. And no one has even thought that there's some likely international ties to this, which is a different thread. So that is Interpol, and then they have to get what they get, and then they're investigating. This is going to be a very long, drawn out case, and it'll keep getting amended and amended, but they have what they have on him. I keep choking. And if anybody thought that he was getting out, no, he's not getting out. He's not.
And the irony is he's also not in the position, candidly, they're never going to offer him anything where he doesn't have maximum exposure to jail. So keep in mind, Derek, this is a federal prosecution. So it's not like, so there's a prosecutor or a team of prosecutors prosecuting this, right? But also in the same breath, the nucleus of the federal government of DOJ is in DC. The line level AUSA doesn't make a decision of, oh, we're going to cut Diddy this deal. It comes from the nucleus back in DOC, and they got to get approval to sneeze. If they're going to do something, any kind of deal or any kind of, it's going to come from DC. And candidly, I don't see them ever offering Diddy anything that doesn't carry such a jail tag to it that he could take it, or he will be willing to take it.
Is he not already looking at a 15-year floor for the guns with the serial numbers off of it? So like you're starting at 15.
And that's ATF, which is a whole different agency.
That's the least of his problems.
99 problems.
Well, and remember, federal, you're doing 85% of whatever number you get. He's no spring chick. I'm 45, so I'm not saying he's old, but Diddy's not, quote unquote, young to where he can do a 40-year deal and expect to walk out of jail one day.
And remember, I'm 56, and I remember all of them.
You're not a day over 32. 32.
Seriously, I wish. But so Diddy has, because there are multiple agencies, so there's the ATF, and then you have HSI, and you have the U.S. Postal Service, and people always forget about them, and you have DOL. So you have all of these law enforcement entities and agencies that are doing what they do for their part of the investigation. HSI is focused on the trafficking piece involving the victims. And another thing, as Franz said, so when I worked a case in another state, we had foreign individuals. And because I'm a solo entity, as an expert, even though I have DHS Flexi credentials, I was working, but the USA, the AUA, the Assistant Attorney General in the state had to get approval from DC for me to be a handler of the victims, because this was the first time that we did this. So it had to come in writing that I could be the person working with the US Marshals, the FBI, the Attorney General's office, I mean, the US, the Assistant Attorney Generals. And I was the only one, because I was responsible for moving them around, for taking them to the grocery store, for working with the attorneys, because see, they didn't speak English. And they had attorneys that didn't speak their language. And where they wanted to put them, which was in a facility for victims, but not of trafficking, I said, you can't put them there. They didn't have the proper cultural stuff. So they're different. All of these things.
And look, here's the thing that nobody's talking about. The moving parts to protect these witnesses, these victims. Okay, so in a normal federal drug case, yeah, the Marshal Services provide security. Yeah, the FBI or the DEA or whomever, they're kind of keeping an eye on things. But when you're talking about this level of trafficking victim, the moving parts to secure them, especially when you have, look, just because Diddy's in jail doesn't mean that he doesn't have reach.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is harder for Diddy to utilize that reach because he's already demonstrated a certain stupidity of, hey, let's talk on the prison phone about all this stuff I want to do. It's still, though, it is very realistic that a witness could turn up missing, dead, get attacked because of his bandwidth, because of his reach. So what we're not hearing a lot about is, think about all the federal resources that are having to be utilized to secure and to protect these victims. And it's and look, it's vast, you know.
And people don't realize how extensive that we had our victims in a hotel, a regular hotel that everybody stays in. And remember, they're not detained. They are victims, but you need to keep them safe. So it was a matter of coordinating with hotel staff to say, with sharing, but not sharing too much, because then they can become predators with the victims that we have. So I live closer and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot there.
Funny, can you force a minor to be involved in a case like this or no?
So, well, when you say force, you want their cooperation, and it is very nuanced in the things, in the ways in which you get their cooperation. So those that are interviewing minors need to have child forensic interviewing skills, which a lot of times people don't. And I'm like, okay, don't say that, because that's not a part of the child interviewing things. But no victim can be forced to testify. They can be encouraged to testify, and you can use whatever information that you have gleaned from them. But it's always in their best interest to do it, because then there are so many services attached to it. So in addition to what we're talking about, they are now, anybody who's under this type of protection with law enforcement and working with them, then they can get access to the counseling, and then the victims witness coordinators and those that have been assigned to them can do that. But they can't be, and depending on the age of the child and the nature of the criminal activity, then you don't want to further traumatize them. So they may or may not take the witness stand.
One other question on this, before we do have a few other things to get on to, because I know we've talked, I mean, the prison phone thing, the stupidity, because Franz, I pointed it out. We did an episode when you guys were talking about, and it happens all the time with people admitting to murder and stuff on a prison phone. So I think when you said maybe Puffy's lack of intelligence, I think as this does roll on, that they've given him enough rope to hang himself with, and it seems like he's got that around. But in this particular case, again, assuming the JayZ was with a minor, and we talk all the time about hush money, can the parents of a minor, if they get hush money, sign those forms and have that go away, or as soon as it involves a minor, is it a different neighborhood?
So we have a principle called in contract law called contra Morris bonum or contra bonum Morris, which is you can't contract against certain things.
Mhm.
The problem with hush money is one, like is the hush money a civil settlement? And if it's framed that, I mean, and look, these guys are dealing with, I would hope, although I may be wrong, if they're going to do a financial payout to a witness for a civil settlement, they are doing his legal team is doing it in such a way that he cannot be accused of obstructing justice.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because the attempt to hush can be just as criminal as the criminal nature itself of the act. That said, a parent cannot take the money and say, "No, I'm not going to participate now in the criminal case because I took this money." Because compounding a felony, which is another crime in many places, is a criminal act. Taking something in the civil arena in furtherance of not participating or trying to gear a criminal outcome is a crime. Now, the reality is we see it every single day. Hey, if you pay me this restitution in this fraud case, I'm okay with whatever the prosecution does. And the prosecution looks at the victim and says, hey, I'm thinking about probating or dismissing this case. How do you feel? I'm okay with that. Well, they're okay with it because they've been made whole because they've received restitution on the front. It gets complicated. But to answer your question, Derek, I don't think there's a scenario where at this point, with the amount of attention on the
Too late.
case, yeah, he can't do anything. And if he tries to, it can be a grenade that it goes off on his hands.
And parents can be complicit in the criminal activity and exploitation of their children. So that is a crime in and of itself. And if they're getting money to engage it, that was one of the things that I thought, and I know we're going to get off of this, but let me just say this. That was one of the things that I thought was really interesting in this complaint that is alleging the 13-year-old being raped. Not saying that the individual is not raped, but like the details, some people think, oh, well, she knew a lot of details. Well, that's good. Well, not if there was somebody else that told her all the details, or not even if she was there. But where were her parents? And who is the person that actually drove her to the first location? Because she's 13 years old. She got a friend that's driving her to the whole award ceremony and leaving her there. So who was that person? And then she called her father. And the fact that her father, did not immediately take his daughter to the hospital or to the police station, no matter what she was saying, based on what they alleged was her physical condition, which is why the person at the gas station let her use the phone. And it's dawn, the crack of dawn, and she's 13. There are some nuances there with this family that's like, okay, well, like, the parents have a duty to protect.
So what I think is interesting is, and let me be blunt, this is not the Neverland Ranch where your kid is invited to go hang out with Michael Jackson, where there's like an amusement park and animals and all this shit. This is not the Neverland Ranch. This is, what are you doing letting your underage daughter hang out with a bunch of musicians? That's the word I'm going to use.
All night.
Musicians all night. Like, you think they're playing Monopoly?
And that's not the details in the complaint that the parents let her do it. So then doesn't that rate? I'm telling you, I get 101 questions. I'm like, what the heck is going on here?
All right, I got to get one of Adrian's questions in here.
Yes.
Because it's a good one, and it ties in because I know they just put Karen Reed's case off. So it was kind of a two-part question. Is the delay helpful or not helpful to her defense? And is social media causing an issue with this? Like, I just saw her on Dateline with I guess she got the B team. She got Dennis Murphy instead of Josh Mankiewicz. But
So they put it off again? Since
but
when?
it's to April now.
It
Oh,
got put off because her motion to dismiss is on appeal. And
yeah,
I will
okay.
tell you, as a defense attorney, the common mantra is any delay is
Is it
helpful.
helpful? Yeah.
The
Yeah.
longer something lingers, it's not like the milk that is sour gets better with time, like a wine. It gets, if I can delay, that is my delay is my friend. Chaos is my friend in the defense world. That said, I don't know that social media gets better or worse when it comes to Karen Reed. It's already it's
It's off the
insane.
hinges. Yeah, it's off the hinges.
I
for
mean,
her.
now what could hurt Karen Reed, I think, and this is not what Adrian asked, but I think this is what Adrian should have asked, is what about our boy Turtle Boy?
Oh God.
Stop.
His trial could
Good.
hurt
Yeah.
her because things are going to come out in his trial that are going to go viral on
Yeah.
social media
Which
that are going to
you called,
directly.
Franz, you called this 6 months ago. You said they
Yeah.
should sever this whole thing, keep everybody's mouth shut. Do not just, oh, these people just burying themselves.
The evidence, I was watching his case and I said, oh, the defense is, I mean, the prosecution is going to look for that. They're going to want to see that. That's why they are asking. And that is where the compromise is. Not compromise for a good deal, but compromise, and it's going to. And the fact that she kept doing all the effing videos, like all the interviews, like, are you still interviewing?
Well, her dad is now a material, in my mind, her dad is a
Material?
material witness.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can he not be? And look,
I-
they can try to make, I mean, they voluntarily, nobody coerced them, nobody forced them. This is not an interrogation. They went on an interview and the
Yeah.
dad made statements that are relevant to
Yeah.
the case at hand. Every time, and look, Turtle Boy, God bless him. He's still making videos. Now look,
Jeez.
It's so
I
great
am
when
not-
you talk to people like Sonny, who's obviously at the top of her game, Franz, the brilliant lawyer, Josh, everybody that we've talked to has said, if these people just talked to anybody with the tiniest amount of sense, they would have said, shut the fuck up. Let us handle this. Anything you say is just you're just gonna dig yourself deeper. Yet every day you just have.
Yeah, but the part of the problem is, and representing high profile people or people who think they're high profile, and it goes back, we can talk about Diddy, is I can be that voice in the room that says, please don't do what you're about to do. Please don't make phone calls from the prison. They're going to do whatever. They're adults.
They've
They
never
do
been
whatever
told
they
no.
think they do.
They've never been told no. That's the thing.
And look, Karen Reed, God bless her, prosecuted a defense in the media. And I'm not gonna say that it did not quasi work, because it quasi worked, at least the first time around. It may not work the second time around, but I've never seen defendants leaving the courtroom talking about things, making statements about things.
Wild.
To interviewers. Matt on Court TV, she's like on a first name basis with him. And I'm like, dude, you need to shut the fuck up.
When we talked with Jennifer Coffindaffer when she was there, said, in all the cases you've seen, and that's including like the OJ, this, that, the other thing, they said you never saw the insanity that was happening in Boston over that, just between the people that thought she was innocent and the people that thought she was guilty, and just the shitstorm that surrounded the whole thing. And you said trying a case in the media, I think that this one here will be the one, carved into stone.
Oh, and it's okay. Now, look, let me say this. I don't want to be a hypocrite. On a high profile case, part of my job is to make statements on behalf of my client to make sure the public knows what you think just happened in the courtroom didn't happen the way you think it happened. Or my job is to try to be that voice of PR to the media so that my client doesn't have to make a statement. Okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay if hey, how do you guys feel like today went? Okay, well, let me tell you how I feel like today went. I didn't believe that witness. The jury doesn't believe that witness. That I'm okay with. Her, as the defendant saying it, is problematic because anything she says, anything she does can be used against her. She's waiving constitutional rights. And by the way, for your viewers and listeners, Statements against interest when you're accused of a crime are admissible. They're not
Admissible.
hearsay. Yeah, they're absolutely admissible. So, like, now that being said, she has defenses.
Yeah.
There are viable defenses in her case. I was the one, I got to tell you, people went nuts. Sonny, people went nuts because I said, I absolutely think she hit that dude with the car. I think she's going to get, I think there's reasonable doubt. And people were like, how can you think she did it and believe that there's reasonable doubt? Well, I've been in the justice system for 18 years. It happens all the time. Innocent people get convicted. Guilty people get acquitted. Reasonable doubt is not contingent on whether or not you did it or not. Reasonable doubt is a legal term of art. So is it possible that she could walk? Maybe.
The Karen Reed case. So I actually use what we do on television, Court TV, and all the other things. So I actually teach from this. I taught a class on investigative practices and mitigating errors in investigations on these things. I had 530 people register for my webinar, law enforcement professionals. Okay.
That's awesome.
And when I go to, I teach, I'm a Florida law enforcement instructor. So when I am there and I teach the executive leaders, I pull out all of our stuff. I have our clips. I pull out stuff from all of, not just me, but from others. And I say, and I pull out the thing, I said, you see this? Because they're not paying attention to this. And these cases literally hinge on the investigative practices and missteps of law enforcement first. Whether it's the 911 operator who jacks something up and then the police that arrive, before it gets anywhere,
sloppy
CSI. Yeah, I mean, it's them first before it can even get to a courtroom. And in this particular case, Boston, not just the one location, but Boston requires such a DOJ lens on them for all of the things that happen, because there's a snowball effect that is happening. Just even in Turtle Boy's case, where what is it, Proctor or the supervisor who, you know, they're looking at other cases that they may have jacked up because they were on them. This is why Karen Reed's case, I have never seen anything like it in my entire life. Like I said, I was around for OJ. I was around for Rodney King. I've even seen the Atlanta child murders. I was a little girl, but my mother was in law enforcement too. So I've been looking at crime and saying, well, what the hell is happening here? The Karen Reed's case is going to be one of the cases of the century, but it is a case that is so flawed from the law enforcement investigation till if she walks, it will be because of something that they did not do properly. Another case, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I have deep concerns about the Idaho 4. And I want to get into that, not right here, but I want my hands on that until I'm reaching out, because it was the first case that I did. There are so many cases that hinge on law enforcement investigative practices, and where there are so many failures, I think we're going to see.
And listen, let me say this. As a defense attorney, I want citizens to scrutinize what's done and what's not done, because normal citizens are like, oh, that never happens. Oh no, that law enforcement always CSI it just right. And that's so for me, I'll be candid. The Karen Reed case is making my life a little easier, because all of a sudden these people, these future jurors in my jurisdiction and others, are like calling police to do a better job.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're not just taking things at face value, which is great. It's also problematic because it develops unrealistic expectations. Human beings are not perfect. It's just never going to be the case that an investigation is always 100% done correctly. Now, there should be a certain way of doing things. And look, it doesn't help when you're having locker room text messages with your buddies about Karen Reed. Like,
which is illegal.
Illegal, had nothing to do with the case, had everything to do with the case. Shot Proctor's credibility. One of the things that shot his credibility. And now the ripple effect is every case he worked on,
Yeah.
you're sitting back like, well, shit, if he did it to Karen Reed, what's he doing to somebody who doesn't have that bandwidth?
That once again, it comes down to training because, we talk to Cheryl McCollum all the time and she won't come out and say it. But if she had been the CSI on that, she said, I could have told you in 15 seconds whether that car hit that guy or not.
Yeah. And it is about training. And I always say in the training, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing the training on, even for my epilepsy stuff, I tell those we're focused on one issue, epilepsy, and how they do that. But my concern is in every single training, I don't care what they're being trained on, there needs to be an ethics slides and there needs to be slides talking about the ADA, because that is not what happens in training. That this must, they get it like once a year, every 6 months. That is not what we need to be doing. And because law enforcement, the numbers are down across the country. There are 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, and the numbers are down at 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States. And it is hard to get the training in, but it is necessary. And they have lowered the standards in most places as to who is engaging, and they don't understand law. I have created something called L3, Lens, Language, and Law. And it is not just for law enforcement, but as Franz was saying, to teach the jury, to talk to the public. That's why I'm really intentional sometimes when I'm saying things online and going to academic institutions to talk about not just the criminal justice students, because we think we only need to talk to one segment of the diverse professionals, but I want to talk to the nurses and the social workers, because they are all showing up in our courtrooms everywhere across the United States and in Canada, where your people are. We have to talk to the population. I know, look,
you people.
Where you people are, and us people this side. And we got to talk about race and culture, because folks get, I've had people say, well, how are you, I'm the Black person, how are you working with law enforcement and they're killing people? I said, well, I'm Black, right?
Sonny, like I'm not white or Black, I'm Canadian.
Oh yeah, like you're a whole different breed or something going on there.
I had one last piece of housekeeping here we got to get through, but for the longest time, Franz, all of our download numbers were like Atlanta, Louisiana. New Jersey's been number one pretty much since day one. Philly. There's a new number one the last month for downloads. Delaware.
Really?
I have no idea why, but for whatever reason, things took off in Delaware. So we just wanted to give them a shout out. And I just wanted to give you guys a few little Delaware trivia if we have some time.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what we know. How many people live in Delaware?
I think it's 247,000.
Franz?
Oh, I'm going to go 150. I'm going to go low. I'm going to do the prices right. 150,000.
Sonny's right. There's 1 million people over in, I was going to say our nation's capital, but I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any thoughts on what their state fruit is? There's two of them.
Okay.
It's probably, I bet it's some nut. It's probably some nut.
No, I was going to say kiwi. My girlfriend literally is my girlfriend lives there. Like my co-facilitator lives in Delaware. Okay, hold on. Let me guess. It's a fruit. So kiwi. Oh no, that would be a southern thing. It's called tomatoes.
Franz?
I'm going to go pear.
Franz was closer. It was a strawberry or a peach.
That surprises me.
All right, we're going to rattle off a couple of birthdays, and then I will let you guys go. Judge Reinhold was born in Delaware. How old is he? Police Academy?
97.
Judge, I will say probably, I'm going to say 69.
Wow, 67. Franz gets a point on that one. What about Oscar winner Elizabeth Shue, leaving Las Vegas and the boys and all that kind of thing?
Such a beautiful human being. How old is she?
Yes.
I'm gonna say 63.
62?
Sorry, Sonny?
62.
Sonny gets a point. She's 61. So you guys are tied on birthdays. And the tiebreaker is going to be the teenage heartthrob born in the great state, our state of Delaware, Ryan Philippe.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm gonna let Sonny go first on this one
okay.
because
So,
I'm drawing a blank on Ryan.
okay, so, okay, wait. So, so he's 30. My sister,
Who, did,
43.
who didn't cry their eyes out watching Cruel Intentions? Come on. I'm sorry, what'd you
40,
say?
I'm gonna go
43.
40. I'm gonna go 47.
And he is 50. So, Franz, you win the birthday off. So,
Ah,
anyways, happy birthday to everybody born in the great state of Delaware. And for another spoonful of Franz Borghardt, check him out on Twitter at Borghardt Law, on Instagram at Franz_Borghardt, and for legal stuff at www.borghardtlawfirm.com. For more of the great Sunny Slaughter, visit her online home at www.sunnyslaughter.com. Visit her on the mean streets of Twitter at Sunny_Slaughter, on Instagram at I am the Sunny Slaughter, or just type that name into Facebook to look for the best of the best, guys. Thank you so much. You know what's funny? We were saying talking with these notes, we got to 4 of the 21 topics that I had written down.
oh gosh. Okay,
We
so
got
that
to
means we have to come back.
we got to 4. Yeah, you guys got to come back. We can't leave it like this. We got to talk
And,
about
Sorry.
YSL and the huge
and-
waste of money.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Child. Oh, we need Josh for the YSL to talk about. Okay, was that not the craziest shiggity that you'd ever seen in your whole life?
The number
Like,
one
what?
question, the number one question we had was sorry, I know we all got to get going, but for Franz as a former prosecutor, with the amount of money the state spent on that, is somewhere up the line, is there not an expectation when you're running a case like this to say, listen, if we're gonna put in this kind of time and money, you had better come out with something other than a slap on the wrist?
You mean come out with something other than an illicit relationship between a prosecutor and a sub prosecutor?
Right?
I mean, um,
That was a lot.
so here is the official answer. Justice shouldn't have a price tag.
Yeah.
But economics should come into play. So maybe don't try a RICO case when an individual prosecution would be exponentially cheaper and exponentially higher in probability to get a conviction. So money shouldn't come into it, but the reality is money does come into it. And man, oh man, is that price tag going to now look, who pays the price tag? The citizens.
Yeah.
The only thing
And-
we
and-
learned from the YSL trial was that Fannie Willis is horny.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, Lord. Well.
I mean, I'm single.
Well, look, so am I. Look, that's why all I could say was, well. Let me stick up for the black chick. Well, we have anger issues and we don't get it right. So, I mean, if it's good.
So is she? So the
However,
question I'm going to have for next time is, what happens to her? Like, what's her future?
well, she won her thing, but is she going to be able to practice under the current leadership and administration? What will that look like? But I think what came out of this is the fact that Woody is going to make a movie. And he is going to be even more famous
A lot of
for
people
the
want to see it.
movie that he makes, because he was a freaking hoot on the stand, okay? And then the whole ex parte stuff, I literally was telling, I think, my kids about this. I said, Chad, you should have saw. Like, they were having ex parte conversations, the judge, and the judge was like bullying up, like, who said something? And I was like, what? I said, now they're giving all the black folks a bad name, like we all gangsters out here. The judge a gangster in the gangster case. It was just ghetto.
Sonny,
Honestly.
I love you. Franz, I love you. That was incredible. You guys are awesome.
See you guys soon.
Have a great
you
day.
back. Talk to you.